anniversary. So we've done these 25 times now, and it's easily the largest crowd we've ever had. I think we had just right at 200 RSVPs. So it's somewhat humbling because first ones we maybe had 4 tables and maybe 20 people at the most. And so here we are today with a really nice crowd. And I want to thank you for making this a priority to come and to our agronomy meeting. And hopefully when you walk out the door today, that you're happy that you did come, and you're happy that there's some things maybe you learned. And it's a two-way street. We're always trying to learn ourselves. So I say this every year, and I'll probably say it again, but this meeting is about us trying to present some, we hope, interesting and valuable information to you, but you all provide interesting and valuable information back to us, whether it's this meeting or what we do for agronomic studies and things like that. So but we really appreciate that. Whoa, now we are getting loud. The slide up there is our staff. It's a really good staff. I don't know if they're probably all standing around here someplace. I'm not going to ask them all to stand up or come up front, but I just want to thank those guys for the job they do. They really, really make everything work, and they make it work well. So, and those are the people you're probably all working with, is 1 or 2 or 3 of those guys there. So I just want to say thank you to all the guys at Integrated Ag for the great job that you do. So we did this last year, and we're going to try it again this year. We use a product called Slido, and if you want to participate, it's an app that you can load on your phone. All you do is just Google Slido, slido.com, and you can do it right now. And what it'll allow you to do is it'll allow you to ask questions, and we've got different polls that you can vote on and things like that. And it helps us, especially with a large crowd like this. It allows you to interact with us as speakers, and you can ask any question you want to. And it's kind of interesting sometimes, some of the polls that are available. So if you would get out your smartphone, we want you to use your phone here today, and just Google slido.com. You can download the app if you want to. If you want to download it on the App Store, it should. I think that's available on Android or Apple, or you can just use your browser and do it that way. Once you've got it downloaded, it's going to ask you for an event code, and the event code is IAS, and you put in that, and that will key you into our meeting today. And once you've done that, that's all you need to do, and from there, on occasion, you'll see us asking you questions, and you can respond to them. There'll be surveys, which are kind of interesting. I hope you'll participate in those. If you like a question, so others in the room are going to be asking questions. You may be asking a question, and if you like that question, there's a little like button that you can, and what that does is it promotes the question. So on our side, if we see somebody, you're going, that's the same question I wanted to ask, rather than retyping it, just hit like. And that helps us to go, that's an important question, so we want to make sure we answer that question or try to answer it. It's anonymous, so we're not doing this as any kind of capture data. We're not trying to figure out anything about you at all. It's really just a way to get 200 people in a room, and hopefully it makes you feel like you're in a room with 10 people. So don't feel like this is any kind of big data capture at all. It isn't. And you can add your name if you want to, or you don't have to. If it's more valuable to say, okay, this is a question from Dave, then once again, it's not that we're going to point you out or anything like that, but it may help us to come back to you later on if it correctly answered. So is everybody able to get on Slido? Everybody understand what we're doing? Does that all make sense? Yes. Yeah. Can you hear me okay now? Everything okay? So there's a few new things happening in Integrated Ag. a big thing that we've kind of not really talked a lot about, but we're in the process of switching over and doing our own soil analysis. We've been doing parts of this for about 4 years now. We've been doing all the drying and soil processing. You grind the soil sample before you, that's what the lab does. And we've been doing that for about 4 years. And then this last year, we bought 2 pH robots. So that's a picture of them there. And so we've been doing our own pH work. This fall, we started that. And then this spring, at least from a ramp up, we may try to do it. Our goal is to do all of it. We're going to pick up the rest of the soil sample work. So that's something new. It's really driven by quality. We think we can do a better job if we can control that quality in-house. It'll streamline our operations. We will pull about 100,000 soil samples per year. So it's no small task what we're trying to do. And little things become big things when you start to talk about that many samples. So the streamlining the operations is really critical for us to keep it all in an inline system. And then the other is because we have such volume, it creates some challenges for us to get the samples to the lab, back to our consultants, and then the recommendations generated back to you guys. And we think we can significantly improve those turnaround times. Dan Frieberg's here today. He's with Premier Crop Services. He's going to be talking a little bit about his advanced learning blocks and so forth. We're going to be partnering with his company this next year. We're real excited about that, and I think there's some really neat and cool things we can do there. And we're also we're going to be beta testing some high resolution imagery this year. Those of you that know me, I've been kind of I'm not an anti-drone person, but I haven't been able to figure out how to bring value back through drone systems. And I guess guys have pushed me hard enough and long enough, we're going to give it a try. But the real piece on this, and we're not going to talk a lot about this today, is we want to be able to get to that place where we've got high enough resolution where we can give you guys actionable information, not just a picture. And the first thing we're going to be testing is stand counts. And our goal is that we can come back to you and you plant your field, and then we can come back and say, this is your population, not for the field, but basically per square inch in the field. And from that, we hope to be able to start doing some analytics, like what was the stand count for that hybrid? Did it emerge better than another hybrid? And be able to do that geospatially, which is pretty cool. And then after 2017, it would be really nice if we could give you guys a map that showed where you needed to replant, exactly how many acres, and exactly what your population is. It's a pretty tall task, but we're going to give it a shot. We're testing 2 companies, Slant Range and Agrobotics, and we'll be talking more about that hopefully next year. We've got a continuing relationship with Ag Leader. This in December we started to work on this. We are trying to work with a few select clients of ours where we're trying to build a program where we leverage the Ag Leader system to do data collection. Ag Leader is a really good company and they have really good hardware. But a lot of times it gets lost in the forest some is how good a data management company they are. And we want to try and, we see some really big gaps between getting information off a tractor, planter, or combine and being able to turn it into actionable information that way. So we've got a really good relationship. Ryan Oehler, I don't know if Ryan's here in the room right now or not, but there's Ryan in the back of the room. We've got a really good relationship with them, and we're going to be moving forward with that. So today's meeting, I said it earlier, we want to make this meeting better every year. We have to make this meeting better every year. So we want you guys to give us feedback. Tell us what we do wrong. Tell us what we do right. Help us to do a better job. So you mark this on your calendar and say, this is the meeting I want to go to. So please help us out. Challenge us. Make us do better. We got, where our format this year is a little different. In the past, we presented a lot of our agronomic studies we've done. It takes a lot of time. One of the feedbacks is we trying to cram too much into this meeting. So on your packet of information, we've got several of those studies there. Some of those will be referenced today, some of those won't. There are some additional ones that we didn't put in there that if you've got questions about some of the other things we're doing, we're happy to share with you some of those things. So we got a lot of stuff going on. It's in front of you. I guess it's somewhat your responsibility if some of these things we don't talk about, but you want to hear more about it, ask us questions. CEUs for the CCAs here. Cecilia's got a sheet she's passing around. If you're a CCA and you need your credits, look up Cecilia, or there'll be a sheet coming around for that. There'll also be for the dicamba training. It's a little different system, and the folks from BASF will be handling that, but we'll have some CEU credits for that too, and then there's the ODA piece that they'll be handling. Restrooms, straight out the door. There's a group of restrooms. This is a pretty big crowd. You can go around the corner through the gift shop, and there's another set of restrooms over there. So we will be taking a break in between speakers today, so you'll have a chance then to hit the restroom. Lunch plans. Once we're finished, we're eating right here. It's buffet style, so you don't have to do a thing. It's approximately 12:30, 12:15, something like that. So you really don't need to worry about much there. And then some of you are here today to also participate in the dicamba training, and that will be after lunch. So we'll have lunch, basically clean up after lunch. They're very quick here. Don't worry about it. And then we'll turn it over to BASF. And for those of you that want to go through the dicamba training, that will be it. So with that, any questions? Oh, yes. So let's, we've thrown up the Slido question here. And just to kind of show you guys how it works. So we've got 96 people that have voted on this. And it looks like 56% believe the New England Patriots are going to win the Super Bowl. So place your bets, folks. Here we go. Is there another question you can throw up there real quick, Racing? Okay, will the Cleveland Browns be in the playoffs in 2020? Five, 2020. So we don't have a lot of confidence in the Cleveland Browns. Neither do I. We're going to move into our first featured presentation, and we're doing this a little bit different. So we're actually packing in 5 different individuals into one presentation. Never done this before, so we'll see how it goes. It's kind of a rapid fire kind of piece, so each one of us, I'm going to start out, and then Grant will jump in, Dan, Ryan, and then JD will finish off this presentation. So we'll see how it all works out, but you won't see much of any of us for very long, really. So I'm going to jump back to just one more time on the Slido piece. If you haven't logged on and you still want to log on to Slido, it's the same slide as before. IAS is your code. So that's you want to make sure you get that set up. It's like our screen's not fitted perfect here. This presentation is going to be we're going to talk a lot about hopefully challenging you to think a lot about budgeting, particularly corn budgeting. I in your handout there, you've got the OSU crop budget that Barry Ward does a really good job. If you haven't downloaded that budget, it's in a spreadsheet format, and you can grab that. Just Google it on the internet. If you can't find it, let us know. We'll make sure we get it to you. But he does a lot of the legwork to build that spreadsheet that makes for a really nice budget. The challenge that we've got, and it's facing us square between the eyes, is that, and you can't see this number, but it's on there, but I did this budget. I plugged in what I felt like are fairly realistic numbers. They're not your numbers. You plug in your own numbers. But 190 bushel corn, I was coming up with about $4.20 per bushel break-even cost. And we are not even close to $4.20 break-even cost. So we need to figure out how we get to where we can make some money on corn. And this topic's about profit. It's not about necessarily high yield. Although we all know that high yield is going to be the key to being profitable in 2018. We still have to maximize yield, but we have to be very judicious about what we do and how we do it. And because we're already starting out in the hole. And now maybe in your situation it's a little different, but I think in most situations, even optimistically, we're going to be struggling to get to that $4 level to break even. As a matter of fact, you ready for a question, Racine? So let's just do a little poll here. What was your farm's 2017 overall corn yield? And what I'm after here is I'm just trying to figure out how close are we to 190 bushels. Are we over that? Are we under that? Where are we at? For the most part, we had a pretty good year. For the most part, we had pretty good yields. And my feeling is probably the 2017, at least for a lot of us, it was the fact that we had pretty good yields that let us live through sub $4 corn. So here we are, we're at about 80 people, and it looks like that's 205 bushels. There's a lot of, that's the winner, but there's a lot of 190. There's some 220s. There's a few greater than 220s. There's a few less than 175. So once again, we got a lot of people in this room in a very good year that didn't have corn yields much above 190 bushels. Let's go to the next question. So now let's look at a 5-year average. For a lot of us, 2017 was a pretty good year. What about in the last 5 years? What's your average corn yield? So once again, here we are, where a majority of us are someplace between 180, 195, and 165. Once again, my thought process, I hope your thought process is that that's 190 bushels. That's $4.21. That's about where we're falling in here on a 5-year average. From a budgeting standpoint, we cannot plan on those ultra high yields as being a given in 2018. I think we got to look at that 5-year average and work off of that. Let's get to the next question, Racing. Based on your 2018 fall price, which as of, I think, a couple days ago when I put this together, is $3.75 out of Heritage in Marysville. What is your break-even yield for corn in 2018? Once again, you got your budget in front of you if you want to look at that, if you haven't done it, but give us your best guess where you think you have to be to break even in 2018. So there's no surprises here. We're right back at that, basically 190 bushels, 185 bushels. Once again, it depends on your operation, but we've got some work to do. It is not going to be an easy year for us. I wish we could go back to 2013 and 12 when we bought crop insurance, guaranteed a profit, sold corn for $6, even made more money, sold beans for $13. I want to go back. Just want to go back. But we can't, and we're not. We're dreaming if we think that's how we're gonna get this done. So my talk is about the big ticket items. So many times, even us as agronomists, we tend to want to focus on a lot of the small ticket items, but we should first think about the big ticket stuff. This is a farm where in all honesty, it's really set up to show what I want to show, but there's a tremendous amount of fence rows, lots of trees. So what I did was I went here and I subtracted out the outside rounds around this field. And the outside rounds around this field made 134 bushels per acre, and it was 8.4 acres in outside rounds around this field. The field is 76 acres. So it's way over 10% of the field just in the outside round. So what I did here is I went in and I counted everything else. So the inside of that field made 230. The outside made 134. I can guarantee you nobody is making money on 134 bushel corn. So this is a big ticket item. What do? There's things like CRP. Maybe we should be putting this 30 feet around the outside of this field in CRP. There's bulldozers and backhoes and cleaning tree lines up. A lot of times we spend $400,000, $500,000 on a tractor. Maybe we'd be better off spending $50,000 on a hydro hoe and start cleaning up fence rows. Maybe we need to talk to our soil conservation guy and see if we can put something into the CRP. That's a big ticket item. That's huge. $362 an acre loss on over 12% of the field because we got dirty fence rows. Anybody here got dirty fence rows? Drainage. Another one that we all know it. We're in Ohio. We get 44 average inches of rain per year. On this side here is systematically tiled every 40 feet. Full disclosure, this area through here does not have tile in it, but it doesn't need tile. It's the highest yielding area in the field. This side here, same field, has no tile whatsoever. Very poorly drained. No big surprise, not to me at least, 238 bushels over here where we're systematically tiled. 203 bushels to the acre where we don't have tile. 35 bushels per acre tile. The PFR that Bex does, I think their ongoing study is something like 25 bushels to the acre on systematically tile. Question always comes up, can you afford to tile? 7 years, you got that paid back. If that's too much for you, we got a tractor and a plow out here, we'll sell you real cheap. And you can do it yourself for about half that. Those are big ticket items. Those are things we need to think about first, not last. Macronutrients. Been doing this for a long time. And for us, sometimes I started to put these slides together. I'm going, everybody's doing this. But you know what? Everybody's not doing this. And really what we're into now is we get the sky is falling syndrome where, guess what? I got a budget that says I'm upside down $30 or $40 an acre. How am I going to eat that out? Well, one easy way to do that is eliminate your phosphorus and potash for you. Just skip it. And there's $60 an acre. Just skip it. You're done. But we got to challenge ourselves that we just don't jump in and do that. So here, this is no application, but if you look at these dark green areas and the brown areas, there's about 29 acres there that's basically at a critical level or below critical level. Or in other words, we get a response to fertilizer on those acres. Now the rest of the field is high, but we're putting at risk 29 acres by not putting any fertilizer on. The other key here is that soil sampling has tremendous variability, and there's only one way that you're going to get around that, and that's more data points, more soil sample points. As you all know, we're big proponents of high-density soil sampling, but here's a good case where if we've got lots of data, we can confidently and wisely decide where we spend our dollars, and it's all about getting return on investment. So the other side of it is this is the other approach we still see a lot of. I'm just going to broadcast it. I'm not going to spend the extra money for the BRT application. I'm not going to spend the money on the soil sampling. I'm just going to broadcast everything and be done with it. So now we've gone from not having anything to where now we're applying 6.7 tons on this whole field, and there's 3.5 acres we still haven't done a thing to fix the problems where we got low fertility, so it's going to persist. And even worse, from an environmental standpoint, we've over-applied on 44 acres. And you've overspent on 44 acres. This is basic precision ag, guys. So here we are. This is why we do BRT, is we're reallocating resources. So now we're at a place where we're at 4.64 tons. We've saved 3 tons of MAP. We're applying it. These dark green areas here are the areas where we need extra. The red areas are where we're putting less or no fertilizer on. That's why we do BRT. So my challenge is we also have to think of things differently. We've got a budget that's upside down. We've got to figure out ways to skinny that budget up. We don't want to wait until harvest to figure this all out. So one of the things that we do sometimes is we'll come in and say, listen, we know that these blues and these light green areas, they're high. We will not see a crop response on those. We can take that to the bank for a year or two, and it will not cost us a bushel, but we can save a little money on fertilizer. So what we do is we put absolutely no fertilizer on these high and very high areas, and we focus our fertilizer only on the mediums and the lows. The reality is what that does is that reduces our total fertilizer needs. We're now at a $28.30 acre savings over just a flat broadcast application. We still have 100% yield potential on the whole field, and we're fixing the problems in the areas where we need to. So we got an upside down budget. We just have to think a little bit more. And there's some opportunities if we do this now, not wait until July to start figuring out how we're going to figure this all out. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Grant, and he's going to talk a little bit more about some smart bushels.
Morning, everybody. All right, so real quick look at some of the trials we did this year. Had 3 products. Used Tiger Sol in corn, which is a 12% nitrogen and 50% sulfur. Used Micro Essentials SZ in corn. That's again 12% nitrogen, 40% phosphorus, 10% sulfur, and 1% zinc. And used Aspire in beans, which is a 58% potash and 0.5% boron. So just the overall data of Micro Essentials SZ, we had 5 different treatments. Control, which was nothing. MAP pre, Mez pre, MAP post, and Mez post, and that was all. I'm sorry, that was 195 pounds of Mez and 150 pounds of MAP to get the P equal at around 178. Have the stats up there, LSDs on the bottom, and the only site that really showed much of a statistical difference was Troy, so which is good, encouraging, but it was pretty much all the treatments were over the control, so not much of a difference as far as pre or post or versus treatment. The other sites just no physical difference there. The Aspire, again, a similar type study, had 5 treatments: control, potash-free, Aspire-free, potash post, and Aspire post. I guess I should say the pre or the post treatments were right around the V3 to V4 stage, and the pre was as close to planning as we could get. These were small block studies, so it'd be very difficult to try to place the product in the right areas if it were pre-treatment. So we planted and then went off those planter marks, made the application, and called it pre. And again, the stats are there. Had a little bit of a difference in Troy and in Washington Courthouse, but I guess unfortunately the control was actually the highest treatment there in Troy. In Washington Courthouse, I guess my caveat to that is there were some water damaged areas there, and we probably should have just thrown that out. I had it in there, and it is what it is. But either way, really not much of a trend we can see. Really needed these so far. And then Tiger Sol, there were actually no statistical differences there. I guess I should mention that this was the first year for the Tiger Sol study, and this was the 3rd year for the Aspire and the Micro Essentials SC. It was only allotted so much time, so I only have this year's worth of data. As far as a compiled 3-year result, it's all pretty much very similar to that. Not much of a trend we can identify there. And it was 160 pounds of urea was the control on the Tiger Sol. The red, which was the Tiger 50 plus urea, was 60 pounds of Tiger Sol and 153 pounds of urea. And the green is AMS and urea, was 125 pounds of AMS and 134 pounds of urea. So that should all be right around 73 to 75 pounds of nitrogen total. So the big question is always, why don't we see a response? It's all about the lowest stave in the barrel. What's going to cause a yield increase if you provide something for the plant that it doesn't already have. So the trials, as I mentioned, were done in a small block setting. We piggyback on our yield trial locations to do these type of studies. Normally, we'll just have an additional range planted of all one hybrid, and we don't really even care what the hybrid is. It's almost all the same. And then we go in and make our fertilizer treatments. So I guess by design, with the yield trials, we don't want fertility to be the lowest stave in the barrel, because we're looking at the hybrids to identify. We want that to be the control variable, is the hybrid. So by nature of trying to do fertility studies at the yield trial locations, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. Is what we've seen, that to try to find differences in fertility in a high fertility environment isn't really the best thing to do. So I guess how do we combat this? What I'd like to do moving forward is do some studies like this in the field. And I don't want to get ahead on Dan at all here, but maybe using a system like Dan's learning blocks to go out and make block treatment in an area that we know to be low fertility of some of these products, and then see what kind of a result we can get from that, and lean on some of our abilities using precision ag technology to see if we can find some differences with these kinds of products. And like I said, this is convenient. Using the small block trial type setup is convenient for us to make manipulations and make those treatments, but it's not necessarily good if we're trying to find these yield differences. So, and that's not to say that these products are what they say they are. It's just a matter of using them in the right way or using them in the right place to see a difference there. Which leads me to this, that as Dave said, budgets are tight. Low prices mean we need more bushels, right? Well, but at what cost? There's a lot of guys I hear that, well, if I just keep throwing products, I'm just going to gain bushels automatically. And you can't really spend yourself into prosperity here. That you have to make sure that we're growing not more bushels, but smart bushels, that we're making money on all those bushels. A good investment in your inputs will pay dividends on your balance sheet at the end of the year. So just if you have a need for boron in beans, if you've identified that you have an area that's low on boron, then sure, let's look at using a product like Aspire and fill that need. You need to identify the need and then address it. And that'll be a good investment in an input, not just necessarily saying, well, I want to spend more. I spent more on this product, so it should be better. Well, it doesn't necessarily work that way. And along with that, to identify that need, tissue testing, there's been a lot of talk lately with us and just in the industry about more of an effort to be more intense in our tissue testing. And I think it's a great thing. And we have a new program this year that if you want to hear more about it, come find any of us. But we're going to be making more of a concerted effort to be more intensive in our tissue sampling and try to identify those areas, particularly directed at micronutrients. Where do we need to be using them more, and where do we need to be using them, and how, and at what stage in the plant's life. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dan and talk about advanced learning blocks, which I think would be a great way to try to identify some of those needs as well.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Our company is called Premier Crop, and our mission is just to help growers and their advisors to convert all this data into something you can make a decision off of, and really new knowledge to help you farm more economical and sustainable. And we're in our 20th crop year, so we've been around a while. We historically market through organizations like Integrated Ag, and we're thrilled to be in Ohio. We're previously as far east as Indiana. We're headquartered in Iowa and have kind of grown out, and we're finally reaching Ohio. We own our own software. It's web-based. It kind of gives us unlimited geography, but we're really focused on crops that have yield files, because we use the yield file to measure whether what we've done is the right thing or not. You can put any layer in the system, agronomic, economic, and weather. The thing that's really driven a lot of growth for us has been variable rate seeding, and it's this idea of creating management zones. Probably it tells you a lot about the company is that when we first started doing variable rate seeding, we wanted a way to verify whether what we were doing is the right thing or not. And so we came up with this idea of just putting a check block inside the prescription. And so we trademarked those as learning blocks. And so a learning block is a 1 or 2 acre higher or lower population inside a management zone. So if you think of your CPUs, it would be, if you're planting 36,000 in your best CPUs, you might put a block of 38 in, just so it's a way to find out, to verify and whether you went high enough or whether you went too high. And then at the end of the year, we've just automated the report, so it shows you where the learning block was, and then it compares the learning block to the immediate area right around the learning block and gives you some analysis. And it's been so popular with planting that we've done it with nutrients now. So any kind of nutrient, sulfur, any kind of nutrient application, you can do learning blocks. And then you can also do crop protection like fungicides and things like that. So for us, it was a big aha thing, was realizing that if we did strip trials, we were running the strip across CPUs or management zones, and a lot of times if you weren't careful, you were averaging the results of pushing population in the best part of the field with what it did when it got to the worst part of the field or a lower CPU. So the block idea just seems to fit the way CPUs and management zones lay out. What we're really excited about is now what we've done is we've modified the software to be able to align the prescription and the analysis to match the path of the equipment and to shrink it to match the path of the equipment. And so we're able to add randomization and replication to the learning block. And so we're really excited about that. We've been doing that a couple of years just to perfect it. This little video helps illustrate it. So the key to this is that you don't do anything different. We're able to execute a scientific experiment using the investment you've already made in the equipment, the technology, and the cab. And so this is just an example of a enhanced learning block with 3 different rates replicated 5 times. So again, we didn't invent that experimental design. Replicated trials are not just in agronomy, but in all of science, the way we prove cause and effect. So we didn't invent the experimental design. All we're doing is delivering a system that automates the process to let you do scientific trials in your fields. So we're really excited about this. Just illustrates, you're planting the field as normal, and it's laying down the experiment as you go, and then in a minute you'll see the combine come through and harvest the passes. So from your perspective, you don't farm any differently, you don't apply fertilizer any differently, you don't do anything any differently. It's all done. The integrated ag consultants will they'll place the enhanced learning block with with your rates inside your CPUs, and whether it's nutrients or fungicides or micronutrients or plant population, they do all the work. They make sure your equipment's set up to execute the trial. It's really exciting to get results back. So we've been doing this a couple of years. This is just an example of a field in Nebraska in 2017. We capture all the weather data, so we're able to quantify the trial by weather and by the growing season. And then we have a lot of detail. We capture a lot of detail about exactly where the trial took place. And so we know, in your case, we would know what CPU it was in, but we'd also know the fertility underneath it and applied fertility. And this is a 4 population trial with 5 replications. And you can see the intended rate from 32 to 40, the applied rate from so it's actually analyzed off the as planted, and 315 was the winning yield and the best, and that was the statistically valid population at 37,000. We've added the little min-max table down the lower right to just kind of give you an illustration of what the yields within each of all those combined replicates are. Here's a population study in Kansas, also 17, 3 rates, 5 reps, 3.7 acres. And I've just added the economics to the slide now because part of what's really exciting for us is we're able to really prove out the value of doing all this variable rate activity. So we're able to lay down a trial and show what the economics are associated with getting the rate right. And the dollars are way bigger than we probably previously thought. So if you think of the seed industry's kind of convinced us that we're kind of wired to think in terms of 5 to 7 bushels per 1,000 plants. That's exactly what happened in this trial. As you went from 32 to 34, you gained another 12 bushel. But if you went past that point, if you went past the ideal rate, you can lose money really fast by pushing populations too hard in a given area. This is an ammonia trial, same field. 150, 170, 190 were the trial rates, replicated 5 times, $24 gain, get it right, $63 loss, go too far. Plant population, the grower's normal rate in this management zone or this CPU was 32,000. So what the trial showed him is potentially there's another $36 an acre in that CPU to get it right and just to push a little higher. But this is one where he pushed too hard and lost. And what the trial showed is you can lose money quick. It's because I'm kind of like Dave. I feel like he's shared ahead of time. This is the 25th anniversary of this meeting or the 25th meeting, and so I kind of share that longevity. So we're 20 years into this, and it's not lost on me. Just sometimes how much we think we know that we really shouldn't be so confident in. And for example, nitrogen is a great example. So this is a successful farming article from a couple of years ago, and the land grant researcher was defending the N-rate calculator. So what happened a few years ago was Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio, all the land grant universities threw all their nitrogen trials together, and that became the backbone for what they call the N-rate calculator. And the researcher here was talking about just how much data they had, and here's what he said. We have 1,500 trials, N-rate trials from 7 states, 90% come in the last 15 years. So this is likely the largest nitrogen response database that we have in the world. And really break down the numbers of what they said is 1,500 trials over 15 years, 7 states, 90% in the last 15 years. It averages less than 15 trials per state per year. So the foundation of everything we think we know about corn response to nitrogen is based on an average of 15 nitrogen trials per state per year. With enhanced learning blocks, what we think you're going to be able to do in your local market is, if just 50 of you working with integrated ag choose 5 fields and do 2 trials per field, you could have 250 nitrogen response trials in a single year that were in your fields, that were in your local market. Population trials, you could quickly have more knowledge about how to manage any given elite hybrid. You could have more trials in a single year than the seed company has. So we're excited about the possibilities. This is the end result of this really is just to work collectively to have response models that fit the uniqueness of your geography. I admire so much what integrated ag has done with the CPU concept, and I think they're right on track. And all we're going to be able to do with enhanced learning blocks is just add to that and have response curves that are calibrated, in a fairly easy way to execute these trials, calibrated to the uniqueness of what exists within your field. So imagine this is an example of what the response curve would look like with all the replicates being the dots. And so you end up with a response curve. And I just put medium organic matter, but just think of this maybe as the CPU that's a 5 on your system. And notice the outside lines, that kind of gives you the error or the confidence interval within the response curve. And so the more trials you do, the more that confidence gains. So every year, based on number of trials, we just get better and better. But then there's a totally different response curves. Maybe what we find out is a different response curve for the 8s and 9s, and then we see the same thing as a different response curves on the 1, 2s, and 3s. So you end up with these unique response curves, and it's not that you're not already doing that. It's just we're just going to continue to refine it. So then what if you figure out the residual fertility? What if you figure out that soil test levels influence nitrogen rates, which I believe is a really big deal. So then all of a sudden you figure out that there's a different response curve for the 8s and 9s when they're really high fertility versus low fertility. And so all of a sudden within a CPU unit, you have 3 different response curves. And so you get the idea. The idea is that there's not one size fits all, that we can use the technology you've already invested in to execute scientific trials to validate and refine input rates. The ideal rate changes within the field boundary. These guys have believed, just like I have forever, that the ideal rate, or it's not one size fits all. And we can have rates that fit the uniqueness of your fields. What we're proving out is that the savings or the dollars involved, the reward for getting this right is far greater than we ever thought. And so we're excited about the possibility. Thank you. I think the question on the screen is, if there's a question, Racine, if you'd put the question up, it's kind of. Yeah, so I was just asking, what's your interest in doing enhanced learning blocks on your fields next year? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Good morning. You guys hear me okay? All right, good. So, Racine, whenever you're ready, go ahead and put the question up. Yeah, my name is Ryan Oehler. I'm with Ag Leader, and I'm going to be talking about decision ag, or making decisions from data. And so here's my question. So when do you use data to make decisions? And this is one where you can check more than one of these options. So first one is I don't use data to make decisions at all. So there may be some of you there. Another one is post-season, after the spring or fall season is complete, so through the winter. Another one is in season during rain breaks or when time allows. And then the last one is in the cab while operating machinery. Auto steer gives me some time to do that. And we'll show the results of that a little bit later. if you need a little more explanation on those three options there, I'm going to explain that here for you. So, yeah, post-season is probably what most of you guys think of when you think of decision ag or precision farming or using data to make decisions. That's, you know, when we huddle up to a laptop or a desktop computer in the wintertime, data that way. Maybe we're working with, or, you know, the goal there is to do some deeper analysis and run some reports and some analysis and get some decisions like that. Kind of the type of stuff that Dan was just talking about, really. But there's really two other really good times to be doing decision ag. Okay, one of those is in the cab, and this typically happens with a display that's in the cab. Ideally, it's a display that's you know, got a lot of map to it where you can interact with the map and look for patterns. Auto steer enables us to do a lot of things these days where you got a little more time on your hands in the cab, and it's a good time to be poking around again, looking for patterns. And that's really the goal of it, is to find patterns. And sometimes we'll see man-made patterns or natural patterns. And so those are some of the things that we're looking for. The last one then is in season. And this is more of, you know, when you're rained out, when you're not actually in the field, but before the season is over. And again, we're looking for patterns here, specifically ones that we may have missed in the cab. Because a lot of times when you're in the cab, things are kind of hectic. There's a lot of things going on. So it's quite possible you might miss some of those. And so this is a good time to catch some of those while it's still early enough to maybe fix equipment or make changes in season. Okay, so those are the three times we're talking about decision ag. And I want to give some examples, and all the examples I have are real-life examples from existing customers. And so let's do the in-cab one first. And here we're looking at the in-command display, and we see some green streaks on the map there. Okay, anytime we see streaks in a straight line like that, is that usually man-made or natural patterns? It's typically man-made, right? And if it's man-made, then sometimes it can be man-fixed too, right? So in this case, we're looking at a downforce map, and those green streaks are rows that are putting on a lot more downforce than the rest of the planter. What's beautiful about being in the cab and looking for patterns like this is we have the opportunity to kind of look around outside and reconcile with the field, with the conditions, and kind of maybe get some clues as to what's driving that pattern. So in this case, we see the combine tracks here, and that we're able to then link that with the streaks in the map and connect the dots and realize, hey, these compaction, this downforce pattern is because of compacted tracks from the combine. Now, if we're looking at that map post-season and we see those streaks, we may be able to come to that same conclusion, or it might be a little more difficult because we don't have the luxury of seeing those tracks out there. You guys follow me with that? So that's where in-cab is really powerful. And if you're any bit like me or my dad, we tend to do a lot of our visual analysis when we're in the field anyways. So if we can have a map that shows us patterns to help us connect those dots in the cab while we're out there, that's a very powerful thing. Okay, let's talk about the in-season time. Okay, so this may be probably the one that you're probably least familiar with, but again, we're doing this during a rain period, typically with an iPad or a smartphone or a mobile device of some type. We're typically not running to the laptop or the desktop computer here. But in this case, we're looking at our iPad. We have our Agfinity mobile app installed, and we see this downforce map again. And in smaller groups, I usually ask, what patterns do you see in this field? And typically, first, people see the headlands. We got a lot more downforce on the headlands here. And then a lot of people will identify this swale through here that required more downforce. And then for those that are paying a little more attention, you'll see some streaks going on in here as well. And so this is a pattern that we may or may not see in the cab. But in this case, we're going to zoom in a little bit, and those streaks start to pop out. We zoom in enough, and now we see a clue here where row number 16 is repeatedly throwing a lot more downforce than the other rows. So I can see my direction arrows here and track that and see that it's row number 16 that's doing that. And so I zoom in a little bit more, I tap on the map, it gives me a crosshair there, and it shows me that, sure enough, row number 16 is putting on over 300 pounds of downforce when the planter average is only 159. And then we move off to row number 15 right next to it, and there we're only putting on 72 pounds of downforce. So what we discover with this is there's a failure on row number 16, the row unit frame there that's causing this trouble, and we caught it in time enough to fix it in season and get back to planting normal instead of having a faulty row unit going there. So again, we might be able to catch that in cab, but for the in-season type of looks, we can catch some things that we don't catch in the cab. A big challenge that we've had with Decision Ag over 25 years now is that there's always been a lot of steps, stumbling blocks to jump through to get the data from the machine to a place where I can see these patterns and start to make some decisions. So, messing around with thumb drives and things like that, we count typically 7 steps to go through just to get to a place where I can make decisions and see patterns. And the challenge with that is with each step, we typically lose a lot of guys along the way. They never get the thumb drive moved, they lose data somewhere in the way. But at the end of the day, not many guys end up making decisions, and that's a big challenge. And so more recently, wireless data services like Agfinity have helped us to jump through a lot of those stumbling blocks so that we're going directly from the machine straight to the map automatically. We don't have to push any buttons, and now we're ready to look at that map, look for patterns, things like that. So that really enables that in season especially. Back to the cab, we talked about machine operations and making sure things work properly there. There's also a lot of crop or agronomy type of patterns that we can look for as well. Here's a situation with the in command, and we've got split screen going, so we're actually harvesting in this case, and we see the yield map being painted here. But we've pulled up our nitrogen, variable rate nitrogen map that was applied that season. And so we can begin to, reconcile some patterns between the two and see if we like the results or not. Again, this is not deep, in-depth type stuff. This is just kind of at a glance, just looking for general patterns and clues. One clue that I'm seeing here is we put a low rate test strip in here. And if we look at the yield map, we can see a yield drag in part of the field. But then other parts of the field, we see no evidence of yield loss from that low rate of nitrogen. So again, that alerts me to things that maybe I can dig a little bit deeper into in post-season there. The split screen also enables us to see these strip trials or learning blocks, as Dan was talking about. So we can actually pinpoint, while we're in the cab, we can pinpoint where that treatment trial went, and that helps us to, again, be aware of what's going on in the field a little bit better there. Another challenge that a lot of us face is most farms, including our own, we have more than one display on the farm. So in this case, display 1 is probably in the corn planter, moves to the sprayer, and then moves to the combine in the fall. And then display number 2 lives in the bean planter, moves to the nitrogen applicator, and then into the grain cart in the fall. So the challenge with that is you've got certain map types that are landlocked into display number 1, such as our corn planting and our spray maps. And then we've got our nitrogen map that's landlocked into the other display. So we have a technology called DisplayCast that synchronizes these displays or any displays on the farm every 5 seconds so that each display has a copy, a full set of the maps. And that's what enables us to do the split screen, even if that nitrogen map came from a different display. So that's a significant hurdle too to get around. So here we're looking at again, yield map on the left and planting prescription on the right. So again, we can look for patterns here in the cab. The thing that we might do in season though with our iPad or a smartphone is we might pull up a report that shows me yield by population. And then I can quickly see that my 33 to 34,000 population yielded the best out of any of those different population ranges. And so again, that's in-season information that's pretty helpful to me. Okay, so to close it out here, I wanted to kind of give you a full circle example of how this pans out. And let's use our downforce streaks map that we talked about earlier as an example. So we notice the pattern in cab, and that's again a powerful thing about in cab is we become alerted to patterns that we might not have seen otherwise. And when we're alerted to those, we can actually do something about them. So that's a big deal with that. In season, what I might do on a rain break is I might look for that same pattern in other parts of the field, see if it's more soil type related, or I might go to other fields altogether and see how prominent this pattern is. Is it just a real small part of my acreage that this is happening, or is it a wider spread problem? And then post-season, this is where I'm going to dig a little bit deeper, and I'm going to say, okay, compaction, I know it's from the combine. How much is it costing me? So maybe that drives me to do some hand harvested yield checks on those rows. And I actually put some numbers to that. And now I can make a good sturdy decision on if solutions like tracks or controlled traffic is going to pay for and correct this type of problem. So that's more of the post-season type of use of that. Okay, makes sense? All right, let's go ahead and reveal the answers or the results there, if we could. See how you guys answered. And while we're looking at that, so let's go ahead and bring JD Bethel up here. And JD's going to talk about variety trials and another decision-making tool that we have. Okay, so looks like, yeah, as we'd expect, the majority primarily do decision-making from data post-season, so 70%. So 18% in season during rain breaks, and very few in the cab there. It's good to see that so many are doing decisions from data, though. That's great to see. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the integrated ag variety trials. And I guess to start, how many of you have heard of Randy Dowdy or David Oehler? I'm sure. Okay, most of us. They treat their high yield contest plots like a laboratory. They control all the inputs that go onto that crop and measure all the factors of how that crop's growing throughout the season. And that's kind of how we treat these variety trials. Grant mentioned it earlier. We eliminate all the variables we can so that we're getting a true estimation on how these hybrids perform against each other. It might go to the next slide. So we have 21 locations in Ohio and Indiana, split north to south into 3 zones. Seed companies can select which zone they want to participate in, north, central, or south, and each hybrid is replicated 3 times at each location. So if you enter a hybrid in all 21 locations, we're going to have 63 data points for that hybrid throughout the year. And here are the companies that we have participating this year, and I guess participated in 2017, and I'll throw the Slido question out there now. Which companies are not on this list that you would like to see participate? You can type those in, and I'll be sure to visit with them here this winter and make sure they're in the trials for 2018. And third-party testing is kind of a grassroots effort. It all starts with you farmers going to your seed dealer and saying, hey, I want to see these hybrids in the integrated ag yield trials because it's important for me to know how your product compares against your competitors. There's a lot of seed dealers here today and DSNs or area managers. So if you see them around today, be sure to ask them if they're participating in 2018. So Bex is up there, SureGrow, New Tech, Stein, Mycogen. These are all companies we're going to contact here in the next month or two and try and get them in the trials, but it's up to you to kind of help push them into that decision. So I guess, Mike, if you want to change the screen, we'll get all the screens on the same wavelength here. What's up now is our homepage for the variety trials. I'm sure many of you have seen it. We did a revamp in 2018. That's kind of update it and bring it into the new millennium. But this is step one on the page. So you go ahead and you enter your zip code. And if it's your first time using it, just start mashing buttons and keep hitting continue to review plots. And you'll get to a results page. And new this year, we added the multiple years column, which we're going to look at today. So you can view up to 3 years worth of data in one place. This is step 2 in the process. You can see all the locations that we received results from this fall. The blue locations are integrated ag trial test sites. The red locations belong to Ohio State or Purdue. We identify which hybrids are in our trials and then pull that data from their data set. So we pull it so we get more reps, so we get more data points, so that good hybrids work their way to the top of the results page. And you can figure out which ones those are. And if you're not sitting right in front of the screen, unfortunately, in the back, it may be a little difficult to read. But this is multi-year results for 2016 and 17. At the very top of the screen, you can see company, traits, maturity, and minimum number of replications. Those are all filter tools. So right now, the minimum number of replications is 45, so that's 15 locations. Well, if you don't think that's good enough, you can change it to 60 reps, so that's a minimum of 20 locations. And that data set will filter and only show you those filtered results. Some of these, like Seed Consultants 1125, I think has the most replications. In AgriGold, 6499, 186 individual replications are in this data set. So we feel pretty confident that that's how these hybrids are going to perform. Say you're from Northern Ohio and you don't want to plant 114-day corn, which is a lot of what we see on here. You just filter the maturities down 103 to 108, and you have a whole new list of hybrids to look through that really fit what you're trying to do on your farm. So how do we pick hybrids? I like to look at multiples, look at multiple locations. You know, we have 21 locations, so we're seeing these hybrids across a broad area. Look at multiple data sources. Look at our data. We pull in the university data. But look at seed companies too and see where their data falls in relation to what we're showing you. And when it comes to picking top hybrids, don't settle. Seed purchasing can be an emotional decision because you know your seed dealers, they're your neighbors. But if they don't have a top hybrid that you want, I would for sure look at other companies and plant top hybrids, because if you don't, you could see yield penalties. That's kind of all I have. I'll bring Dave up.
Okay, this wraps up this portion of it, this presentation. I guess just as a wrap up, think about the big ticket items. Don't skip the big ticket items. Water, Ohio, water is important. We all need to be thinking about water and how that affects things. Too much, not enough, trees, things like that. Macronutrients are important. Smart bushels. Grant talked about smart bushels. Don't just assume because we make a special application, it's always going to increase yields. Challenge yourself to find those products that will bring you yield ROI on what you're doing. Use something on the farm. I mean, we've got the technology today to do lots of testing. The advanced learning box, we're going to be promoting that this year. Think about that on your farming operation. Challenge us, challenge yourself to make sure the things that we say you should do actually pay. It's a great opportunity. The seamless precision ag. We see a lot of guys got lots of technology on their farms, but how many of us here, don't hold your hand up, still have yield data on your combine that you've never downloaded yet? See it all the time. We've got ways to move that along. Velocity of data is my little term. It kind of ties in with Ryan. That is, the faster we move that data, the more we're going to use that data, the more valuable that data is. So we need to figure out how to move data fast. The IAS yield trials. It's the gold standard. Been doing this now for, I think, almost 25 years, maybe 25 years. And it's still important. When you look at that budget, that line item that's called seed, especially on the corn side, is a big chunk of your inputs. And it's a big factor on yield. Picking the right hybrid is still very important, so we don't want to forget that. So with that, we're going to wrap up here. We're going to get set up for our next presenter, and we've got just a